How,
Well,
how's
good morning, everyone.
Sound good.
Happy to see everyone today. My name's Steve Huntsberger, and I want to welcome you to the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce. This is a first for us. After having been using Zoom for a year, we decided it would probably be an appropriate thing to start teaching our members how to use podcasting and the important role that podcasting has in our world. So this is the title of this program is called Expanding Your Reach with Podcasting. And I think we've probably all started to experience this a little bit more. We can't get out as much as we'd like to, but I think that what we have found is that these virtual opportunities really are probably more effective than we realized. And it really, this last year kind of forced us. The technology was there, we just didn't use it. And I was talking to two good friends of mine, Michelle Kane and Ken Carfagno, and they both are experts at podcasting. And we started this conversation a couple months ago about bringing this idea to our members. Sometimes it's educational, sometimes it's fun, but I have found myself utilizing podcasts and consuming it as a consumer of podcasts for news, entertainment, learning life skills, things like that. And I think this is particularly important for our chamber members and it's an interesting group of people that we have here. So we have nonprofits, we have one-person shops, we have educational institutions on today. So I think it's a really interesting group of folks, but I'm particularly happy to introduce to you Ken Carfagno and Michelle Kane. And Michelle Kane's actually up first on my screen. She's up first. So I don't remember what the agenda looks like, but I'm going to turn this over to them, and we can get going. And I'm going to let people in as they come in. I am recording this, so this will be up on our YouTube channel. So we'll share this out with the members. And if you have friends and colleagues that you think might benefit from this, I would encourage you to find this on the YouTube channel and send that out. But so Michelle is the owner of Voice Matters, and I'll let her introduce herself a little bit more. She has been a board member in the chamber for many, many years, and actually chairs my marketing committee. Ken Carfagno is the owner and president of Carfagno Cleaning. Got to know him last year, right before the pandemic started, and really was my technical advisor as we were all kind of on this Zoom learning curve. So a big shout out to and appreciation to both Michelle and Ken for their personal friendship, but also their work that they do with the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm going to turn this over to Michelle and Ken, and we'll get going, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end.
Okay. Well, I'll just do a short intro. My name is Michelle Kane. My company is Voice Matters. I own a PR and marketing company right here in Souderton, Telford. Actually, my home office is in Telford. And I've been a communicator for far too many years than I care to mention. But really, my whole career has been around communicating, both in agency life, nonprofit life, and now swinging back to the agency model with my own business for, goodness, about 12 years now. So, but we're going to actually kick it off. Ken is going to open us up and talk about what podcasting is and its potential for you. And then I'm going to talk about its role as a client service, how it can help my clients or you market yourselves, and talk a little bit about creating your podcast. And then we'll finish up with Ken, letting us know best ways to share and get your podcast in front of people, because that's the whole point. And then hopefully we'll have time for a little Q&A. But if we run out of time, I'm sure I can speak for Ken on this point that we're both available and happy to speak to anyone who's curious. So take it away, Ken.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Well, we don't want to make this some boring Zoom meeting like you are in school and you got to sit on here. We don't expect anyone to take notes. We might be throwing things at you that may be confusing, but please write down questions. Our goal is to not just be talking heads or talking microphones. This is what we both do. They are very fun projects, and we each have our own point of view. We each have our own reasons for doing this. So based on our conversations with Stephen and Michelle, the three of us are going to, I guess Michelle and I are going to spend about probably 30 to 40 minutes is my guess, going through some nuts and bolts of podcasting, the how, really the why, the what, the how, and then creating the podcast from, from 0 to MP3, so to speak, and then from MP3 to, RSS feed and out to the world. So we have a lot of stuff to cover, and then we want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. And really what I want to see the Q&A is I want it to be brainstorming, like, what could I do with a podcast? And Michelle and I, we're going to go back and forth and give you guys ideas on some ideas that we see in our world. Me personally, I've already been to a couple of different podcast conferences. I go every year. I'll be a speaker this year on stage at a national podcast conference. So this is a great opportunity for me. So thank you, both of you, to let me speak today. Okay. Basics. Start from the very, very, very basics. What the heck is a podcast? I got a bunch of statistics to show, but just by a show of hands, who listens to podcasts? I just want to see who's in the room. Okay. All right. So everyone who didn't raise their hand, I didn't see anyone. Terry's on iPhone. Okay. Malcolm in the middle there. Okay. So you have one. Okay. So a podcast, you guys are all pros, but I'll just explain it for those that are not on this call and that'll be listening to this later and they were embarrassed because they didn't know what a podcast was. They didn't want to come on the call. Think of a podcast like a talk radio show. There's so many different types of talk radio shows. There's monologue version, dialogue, there's interview shows. There's all kinds of cool high-tech ones. A podcast is you can take ownership of your very, very own talk radio show. That's it. And you can get those recorded and you get them edited, you get them completed, and they go out into the ether and they can go all over the place. That's all a podcast is. There's no mystique or mystery about it. That's it. A podcast is a talk radio show that you can create. You don't have to get syndicated. You go earn, so to speak, your syndication. You start from scratch. Anyone can start. I had breakfast yesterday with Max, and I was showing him how he could start his own podcast. And it's simple. Okay, so that's what is a podcast. Any questions on that real quick? Like, what is a podcast? I'm guessing that's a pretty basic. We're good?
One question. When you say your own talk radio show,
Mm-hmm.
You talk about yourself or your business or you?
Yes, and yes.
Okay.
It's whatever you want to talk about. If you want to talk about yourself, you want to talk about your business, you want to talk about that you love running, if you want to talk about art, if you want to talk about music, if you want to talk about awesome things in Philly, if you want to highlight local businesses, there is a point and a purpose to every talk podcast, for every podcast. You could do it as a hobby because you just enjoy it. You could be using it as a targeted marketing arm of your business.
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Then stay tuned. We'll help you with that towards the end. So just get the basics of what it is. Does that make sense? That's what a podcast is. You design it, but it's an audio format piece of content that goes out everywhere. Okay. So that's the first part. Next, why do a podcast? I told you, what is a podcast? Okay, Ken. So why would I do one? They seem like a lot of work. I just heard you say that you are in a rented office today and you're going to be in here till probably 10 o'clock tonight. Why would I put myself through that? Well, let me give you some ideas. Let me give some statistics here. So, like I said, target marketing for your business is a very popular use of it. But I'm just going to cover a couple statistics on maybe why you may want to consider a podcast. And then I'm going to share some success stories to help kind of hammer in my why should you might consider a podcast. How about this one? More than half of all consumers the age of 12 in the US listen to podcasts. 50% plus of our US population over the age of 12. My kids that are 13 to 16, they listen to podcasts. My 16-year-old is in a different room right now. He's a podcast editor. He has his own business. So half of the country over the age of 12 is already listening to them. Okay, that's something to store up there. Second, nearly 3 out of every 4 podcast consumers like Steven in the US say they enjoy tuning into podcasts to learn something new, and they will do so on a regular basis. Digital learning. Interesting. Half of the people are listening, and and 3/4 of those people are doing it because they want to grow in some way. Maybe I should have a podcast that teaches people something, not just like commercials. I'm not putting commercials out there. That's not what it is. It's type of content that helps, educates, grows people. That's the magnet. That's what attracts people to your show. Third thing, podcasts are being consumed heavily on the move. 64% are being consumed while in a car or truck, 49% while people are walking around, jogging, things like that, and 37% while commuting in the car, in traffic. This one blew my mind. Michelle, this stat blew my mind. 80% of people are listening to 7 hours of podcasting per week. 80% of people. So half the country over 12 is listening to them at all. 80% of all people are listening to 7 hours a week. And it gets better, worse, depending on how you want to look at it. If you're a marketer, check this out. 22% of our population is listening to, take a guess, everyone, before I say the number. How many hours per week is 22% of the country listening to? Take guesses.
12.
12. We got a 12. Okay. Who else?
20.
20?
10.
10. Who said 10? Who said 10? You're way off, Max. Who said 20? Leslie?
40.
Oh my goodness. That's like the 5%. No. Leslie, you, in The Price is Right, you win because you didn't go over. 22 hours a week, average of 3 hours a day. Just pause. Osmosis. Feel that come in. 22% of our population is listening to 3 hours of these things every single day. Why? Well, 3/4 of those people are doing it because they want to learn something. It's pretty fascinating. Another one that I thought was really fascinating. The average weekly podcast listener. So think of all these people listening to stuff. The average podcast listener, they subscribe to an average of 6 shows, sometimes 7. And for those that listen to podcasts, I encourage you, I challenge you, look at your whoever you use to listen, whatever you're using, Apple or Google or Stitcher or whatever you're using to listen to your podcast, just count how many you've subscribed to. How many do you listen to on a regular basis? Whatever that answer is, it's kind of like your radio in the car. You have presets, 1 through 6. That's what people do with podcasts. They're on their phone, on their app, on their phone. They've got 6 presets, sometimes 7. And so, wow, there's tremendous opportunity. So question, so Stephen, you're on mute. Are you trying to share something?
I am, and I forgot that I have a virtual background. I'm trying to show you my list of podcasts, and I have Kent on here, Smart Cleaning School.
Oh, yeah.
And I just counted mine, and I've got 8. I've got 8 subscriptions that I listen to on a regular basis. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
And I totally whiffed on that. I went right into talking about the podcast. I forgot to introduce myself. You did introduce me. So yeah, Ken Carfagno. Carfagno Cleaning is my local cleaning company. But I also am a coaching consultant to cleaning companies nationally. I help people start cleaning companies. I run various cleaning owner groups. I even help leaders of cleaning companies and with accountability, all these stuff. But I have a podcast as the center of my Venn diagram, so to speak, that I use as a center of all my content. And I repurpose everything from there. So my podcast is the Smart Cleaning School, and I have 160 episodes. And we're closing in on 40,000 downloads. I've been doing this for about a year and a half. So,
Wow.
So that's me real quick. All right. So those are the stats on why. So just put some of those together. Okay. So half the population's over 12 is listening to them. That's pretty good. 22% are listening 3 hours a day. Okay, good. People are listening to them this long because they want to learn something. Okay. So you put that into your mindset, and only 6 people are listening to only 6 of them. So now, what if I could make a show that became one of the 6 to my target audience? Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be interesting if they listened to you an hour a day. I have 15, 20-minute shows. I have my customers, they'll listen to me speak. It's crazy. All day long while they're cleaning houses or offices. They'll binge my show, 15, 20 episodes. I get emails like all over the world. People listen. I don't even know how it happens. Michelle will teach us that part. So those are some stats. Think about those things. Now I want to share some success stories. Who likes hearing like cool stories of podcasters? These are all friends of mine. So the first one, my friend John Stange, he's a local pastor out of Yardley Langhorne, runs a church. He's super entrepreneurial pastor, and he started an everyday audio Bible podcast about 5 years ago, which happened to have just crossed 4 million downloads. And then he started a second and a third podcast. He puts his sermons onto a podcast, leaderships he does. And because he's got a platform, Michelle, of 4 million downloads, he wrote a new book that's coming out in May that Random House Penguin paid him a $25,000 advance for a first-time author because he has a 4 million person platform. Because a major publisher doesn't just pick up a new author and pay you $25,000 for a book. They're looking at John. So tell me about your podcast. Well, it's Audio Bible. How many people listen to it? 4 million. Yeah, we're going to give you a deal on a book. That's my friend John. His book, Dwell on These Things, comes out in May 24th, I believe. Awesome guy. Friend of mine, Brian Orr, he's out of Ohio. He's in my kind of line of work. He does HVAC. So for those that are in the service business, HVAC School is his podcast. And he was just running an HVAC business. He started an HVAC school just to teach other HVAC technicians and business leaders how to just do stuff. He's building a community, like help each other. Here's the podcast, bring people together. Well, it brought HVAC people together in a big way. To such a level where he has a couple 100,000 downloads of his podcast, and he makes about $4,000 a month in ads off of YouTube and his podcast. It's also created such a buzz that he's got like his own merch, his own shirts, and people will wear his shirts. He's had people that found his podcast, love him, and have moved from one part of the country to him to work for him because of his podcast. So he's made a side income and built membership where he makes six figures outside of his HVAC business because of his podcast. John Lee Dumas, a friend of mine. Have you heard of this show, Michelle? Entrepreneurs on Fire? Yeah, so John's a friend of mine. John started Entrepreneur on Fire 2012. He was the first daily podcast show that interviewed successful entrepreneurs every day, 7 days a week. He's up to like 3,000, I think, interviews. I was interviewed on his show a couple of years back. And John has over 100 million downloads. He's one of the larger podcasters in the world. And he makes multi-seven figures built off of the podcast. He started the podcast and all these ways of monetizing built around it. Memberships, books, courses, masterminds, coaching. He's got an incredible system, and him and his wife and two VAs run about a 1.5, 1.8 million revenue company off of the podcast, and his profit's like 92%. He's almost no overhead. 4 people making $1 million a year. That blows my mind. That's another one. My friend Andrew Buckwalter out of Nashville. He's a realtor. So if you know any realtors, think of this is a cool application. So he's a realtor. He's in Nashville, super cool town. And he's got a big hobby. He loves music. He loves cool kind of niche-y things in the town of Nashville. And he also knows that there's a lot of people moving into Nashville. It's one of the biggest areas for, people, leaving and whatever that's called, whatever that term is, but they're coming in Nashville. And so he made a podcast, The Heart of Nashville, where he interviews, he actually converted his old camper into this like recording studio on wheels and put Heart of Nashville on the side of the thing, drives it around town, a rolling billboard. He'll interview musicians in the trailer. They'll play like in the trailer and they'll talk and he'll interview artists and local artisans and business owners. And he'll just like share the coolness of Nashville. People are interested in Nashville. They find his show. Oh, this is cool about Nashville. And by the way, and this show is sponsored by his own business sponsors the show. He doesn't ever talk about real estate, ever. He doesn't talk about real estate, but his show sponsors it. And so people subconsciously, when they need a realtor because they've listened to the show, they decide to move into Nashville. Oh, I know a realtor, the guy that I listen to. He's a great guy. I love his personality. They hire him for realty. So these are stories that kind of get you thinking about stuff at the podcast. Another one, my friend Andy Storch, he's in talent development, professional guy, master's MBA guy, does talent development in his own business. So he runs talent development programs and things like that. Not too far off from our other friend, Ken, Stephen, stuff like that. I've actually introduced these guys. But Andy was having trouble getting past gatekeepers. Anyone ever had that trouble? Like you're in sales, like, okay, how do you get past the gatekeepers? Andy found something really cool about this. I'm trying to call. I'm getting stonewalled. I can't get to the person. But now I have a podcast, the Talent Development Hot Seat. That same person that he couldn't get through to. Hey, Mr. Smith, I'm Andy Storch, the host of the Talent Development Hot Seat. Been really impressed with the type of work that you're doing in talent development for your company. I'd love to be able to bring you on my podcast and share some of your advice with the world. Every time, oh, I'd love to be on your show. Now he has a hour-long conversation interviewing the people that he'd like as clients, and not in a selfish way. He's genuinely extracting information to help his audience, growing his audience, and then he'll throw those guests into like a Facebook group or a community. And from that, he has built his sales company. He had launched his first conference in California for talent development. It had over 140 people there right before COVID. And he built a membership program off of it that he's making close to 6 figures off of, all from a podcast. Those are 5 of my friends, a shared example. And now I'm gonna go into the wrap up before I pass it on. So you guys all still with me? Okay, cool. So here's a question. Oh, a podcast has been around forever, right? Like they're old, YouTube and podcasts. Like I missed that train. Have you ever heard people say that, Michelle? Oh, I'm too late. We're always too late. Like it's too late. I missed my opportunity to buy Microsoft at $2 or Bitcoin at 30 cents or whatever, right? So you feel like that. It's not at all. I want to share some stats about podcasting in general. And by the way, if you want to know my sources for any stats, I'd be glad to share those with you. I can email them. I'm just going to turn my phone off buzzer. Okay. So there are currently 300 million YouTube channels. You thought I was going to say podcasts. 300 million plus YouTube channels. That is a lot of YouTube channels. There are 1.7 million podcasts. It's almost doubling year to year. They started around 2010-ish, 2008, 2010, and there wasn't that many. There's more and more providers that put them out, but there's 1.7 million podcasts. Here's what's really, really interesting. Out of the 1.7 million, how many do you think are active podcasts? Those are podcasts that have published something in the past 90 days. Because there are people that, I have a podcast. When's the last time you published? Well, I put one out last year, sometime in COVID. That's not an active podcast. The most important thing you can do for your podcast is to commit to your audience, build trust by delivering consistent content. If you're doing a newsletter for the chamber, it better be out the same time. Whatever you promise to your audience, they expect that promise. You don't tune into a radio show 4:00. If it's say 4:00 every day, it better be there at 4:00. And if you promise every day or every week or every month, whatever you choose, you better be there when you promise. Consistency is the most important thing. It really is. More so than quality. People build trust around your consistency. So 1.7 million total. How many do you think are active? Take some guesses. Anyone? Out of 1.7 million, how many are active shows?
Million.
A million. There's a guess over there. Okay. Leslie, a million.
Half a million.
Amanda says 500,000. Okay. Anyone else guessing? I will tell you that they are both wrong, but if you split the difference, you will get closer. Now take a guess.
750,000.
Oh, you're getting closer, but it's not an exact split. 850,000 are active. Half of the podcasts are active. What are they doing? They're not we're not recording and publishing content consistently, that's half the podcasters are losing trust. Half are absolutely gaining trust. Okay, one more. How many of those podcasts are, let's see, what do you call them? Okay, I'll just say the number. Out of those, only 350,000 are active and have at least 10 episodes. This is mind-boggling. That means that to just be in the top 20, here's where you are in this power curve. Like every industry has a power curve. It hits a point of a critical mass and it blows up, right? We are so low on the curve. We haven't even crossed critical mass yet, because to get in the top 25%, all you have to do is have a show that you consistently publish and have 10 episodes or more. That's top 25%. Furthermore, I found these stats are really cool. If you publish a new episode, and hopefully this makes sense to you, you publish an episode, let's say it comes out today, 7 a.m. Okay, downloads start happening. People start listening. Every time someone listens to your show from any source, any media source, that registers a download. Anytime someone listens to it. So in the first 7 days from publish, if your show gets 26 listens, 26 downloads, you're in the top half of all podcasts. If you get 72 downloads in the first week, you're in the top quarter. If you get 231, you're in the top 10%. And this is in the first 7 days. If you get 539 in the first 7 days, you're in the top 5%. And if you get over 3,062, you're in the top 1%. My friend John Stange with the 4 Million podcast, he showed me his stats, and here's the published date, and I'll have 75,000 downloads on day one. I'm like, oh my gosh. My show, I get about 150 downloads per show. And in the first 7 days, about 125. So that puts me about top 15%, like crazy. Michelle, I don't know if you want to share numbers, but out of curious, you guys are in downloads for the first 7 days? You're muted.
Wakey. Because we're kind of niche, we're probably 75, 80 in the first.
Okay, 7 days.
And again, yeah.
Yeah, so you're top 25%. You are the top quarter. You are better than 75% of all podcasts. And you said something, your niche. Well, I'm kind of niche. Yeah. I'm for cleaning company owners, and it's getting 125 people around the world. I'm in all 50 states and like 57 countries.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. So those are some quick stats. Now, before I'm going to move on to Michelle here. I wanted to give you guys some of the why, some of the stats, kind of give you paint the picture and set up. So I want to share one more just quick little story. I had breakfast with Max yesterday. I'm not going to just go into detail, but would you say, Max, that I have maybe persuaded you to start a show?
Big time. I did not know, I did not know much about podcasts at 7:30. By 8:52, I felt like Ken had definitely persuaded me to start one. So,
and all I did with Max is I drew out some circles. Like, here's your business, Thrivent. Here's you, Max. So decide if what's your brand? Is your brand going to be Max? Is your brand going to be Max of Thrivent? You decide. But what we talked about is basically, and Michelle, I'm sure we'll go into this, but start with the why. So don't talk podcast yet, but just think about marketing in general for your business. The why, the who, the what, and the how. So the why, well, I think that I've proven the why of podcasting. It is huge. But just in general, why do you want to get your message out? That's marketing. Decide why you want to do anything. It's always start there. And Max knew that he wanted to help. We talk about the who. Well, he's a new college graduate. There's a lot of college graduates entering the workforce without a clue about anything. They don't know how to be an adult, let alone how to take care of money. So Max is helping him with that stuff. So he can target an audience of new college graduates in the workforce, entrepreneurs, employees, whatever. He can build a show around that for those people looking for financial advice, and he can become the coach around that for that tribe of people. And he's like, wow, now I know why I want to help these people. I want them to be better in life. That's my why. That's my who. What about my what? Well, the what, in this case, the what's a podcast. Okay, great. And what about the how? Well, the how could be Do you remember what it was, Max? What we talked about for the how?
Besides the podcast?
Well, the how, like what was your hook? What was it that was going to bring people in? It was amazing. I don't want to steal your thunder, man. It was
Sure.
good.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sorry. Yeah. So real quick, just to fill you guys in, when we got breakfast, and one of my professors in college, he gave me probably some of the best advice I ever heard. He would say, when you go back to your hometown, where you settle down, just start meeting with people in the community. Ask them 2 questions. One of them is, tell me your story. How'd you end up doing what you're doing? And the other one is, any wise words of advice for, a young kid out of college working a job. And so Ken was like, man, that was like phenomenal advice. You should capitalize on that, meet with people, record their stories so that other people can hear kind of what you're learning. So that was how.
So could anyone envision a show like welcome to Finances with Max for all those new college graduates out there? How would you like to start off your career 10 years ahead by hearing from professionals that are 10, 20 years ahead, and we're going to hear their stories. We're going to find out the wise words that they wish they would have done when they were our age. Welcome to the Max Delavi or the Thrivent whatever podcast. And then you go and then brought to you by Thrivent or whatever. And then you say, today's interview is with Ken Carfagno. And then can you guys all see that? Can you see people listening to something like that? Like younger people wanting to, I can like speed up I can not do dumb things, my friends. So that is where I would like to turn it over to Michelle. Thank you for bearing with me. And Michelle, please take it away.
Absolutely. Okay, just so I don't have a sticky segue, Steve, could I have sharing powers, please? I'm not going to pop a slide up. I'm not going to pop a slide up straight away.
You have it now?
I have the power.
Do you have it?
I do. Fabulous. Okay, cool. So thanks so much, everyone, for taking time out of your busy day to join us. It is exciting. I'm a total podcast nerd at this point. Maybe it's because when I was younger, I wanted to work at WKRP in Cincinnati. I don't know. Or a college.
No turkey drop.
No turkey drop. No, see, that was my first PR lesson in life. No. And then that when I scratched that itch in college, college radio, WDNR at Widener, the 10-watt flamethrower off of Old Main. And then it lay dormant for a while, and I built my career in communications, and so this is in addition to my work with my PR and marketing agency, Voice Matters. It's actually it's a nice dovetail. I co-host a weekly podcast with my friend Karen Swim. It's called That Solo Life. I've had a couple people say, "Is that a singles podcast?" I'm like, no, but maybe it should be. Anyway, it is the podcast for Solo PR Pro, which is a membership organization. It's, almost like a mini chamber for people who work in PR and marketing for themselves, who are self-employed and built out, a small agency, virtually. So really, we talk shop. We talk about current events in the PR and marketing world. And we also talk about issues important to self-employed people and in business. We have touched on the PRO Act, which our chamber just had a session on, and what that means for solos. We've even had someone here has been a guest on our podcast. Brent Thompson has helped us walk through the weeds of all of the COVID financial opportunities. So we're very grateful for that. When someone cannot come on and make us smarter, we love it. So, much like Ken has said, I hopped on board with the Solo PR Pro podcast because for myself, I call myself an information junkie, and that's fed my passion for what I do. It's, you need to know about this because it's going to help your life. And you need to know about this because it's going to build your business or just make your life better. So I know that Solo PR Pro as a group has been invaluable to me. And so I'm thrilled to be part of a team helping others to find their way. So let's talk about what is a podcast potential for you. So I'm going to hop on my screens now. Here we go. Are we sharing? Let's get me out of the way and present because you don't want to see my Canva stuff. There we go. Are we all good? Excellent. So yeah, as Ken has shared, a podcast is going to be a very effective piece of your content marketing strategy, which is just shop talk for, all of the things that you put out there to promote your business. Do you have a blog? Do you use social media? Do you send an email newsletter? That's all what we call content marketing, which at its pure definition is developing, sharing relevant, valuable, and engaging content to your target audience with the goal of getting new customers or increasing your business, from your existing customers, from building that loyalty. It keeps you top of mind. It demonstrates your expertise. The podcast can work wonders in creating that know, like, and trust bond that you need to develop your business. People are hearing the warmth in your voice. They're learning that you know what you're talking about. And so then when they finally have a need for your services, they're going to think of you first, right? So now I'm going to dive in a bit to, okay, so this is great. We've talked about the theory, why it's wonderful. How do we do it? How do we get started? And I love that Ken mentioned consistency. My first bit of advice is make a pact with yourself to be consistent. Karen and I record every week, and that's our crazy choice. We carve out time every Wednesday. Some days it's calm, some days it's chaotic. The dog's barking and the day's gone sideways. We're dealing with crises or whatever. But we still carve out that time to record. But for you, do what's right for you. It's just like with any piece of communication that you consistently produce, whether it's an e-newsletter, you can do it monthly, you can do it bi-weekly. Just do what you know you can keep up with, because you want your audience to know when they can count on hearing from you. The next part would be choose a name. What am I going to call this? You could be as clever or as plain as you like. Again, make it suited to your comfort. You want to brand it in a way that people will understand what it is and what you're about to share before they dig in a little deeper. You want to do some research across the podcast platforms. I'm not saying that you have to run out and get a trademark lawyer, but, do some Googling, make sure that whatever name you choose, it's not going to be something that, you're taking someone else's podcast name. Next is make a plan. And that can be creating, is it going to be part of your editorial calendar, which again is marketing speak? Or are you just going to sit with a pad and paper or a Google Doc and make a list of topics that you want to cover? Start your episode list. How many that you want to start out with will depend on how often you're going to release your podcast. Don't feel like you have to, build out a whole year's worth right away. You're not going to, if you're at a loss for topics, just go back to my little trick. It's not a trick, but it's a good structure to use even when you're trying to create any kind of content that is focused on building your customer base. What are the 5 questions that people most ask you about your business? Great, 5 topics. What are the 5 questions that people should be asking about your business? Let's say you're a house painter and people say, well, how much? Well, you really should be asking me what type of paint is right for your room. All great ways to generate topics. For our weekly podcast, we like to have about 4 topics bouncing around at a time, because we know things are always changing in our world. There's always something new in social media. There's always a new crisis, or the way someone may not have handled something in PR too well to discuss. You can stay fluid in that. So don't get too stuck on that. But you do want to have a plan to start out. And I will say that because much like Ken is doing today, he's recording 10 episodes in one day. You're going to want to begin and perhaps even continue the practice of having some episodes in the bank. I would say no less than 3, aim for 6 just to get started. So if you are crazy like us and doing a weekly podcast, let's say something happens, and you have to skip a week. It's not, oh, we don't have an episode to put out. That's terrible. And guess what? I'll tell you a little secret. even though you should remain consistent, it's not the worst thing in the world if you miss one. It's okay. So try not to be too hard on yourself. We want this to be manageable, and you want it to remain fun. So after you made your plan, you've chosen the name, now choose your equipment. So laptop, desktop, all it takes is Wi-Fi and a dream, right? Use your computer. Then you're going to need to choose a recording software or platform. Now, you can do, I call this the DIY route for recording. If you choose like an Audacity or an Adobe Audition or a GarageBand, I mean, that's going to be your recording, and then you have to work on making it sound good. Or you can go the route of platforms that are out there like Zencastr or StreamYard. We, for our podcast, started out using Zencastr. It was great, especially because, I'm in Pennsylvania. My podcast co-host is in Michigan. Our guests are all over. And they work very similar to Zoom in that you just create the show link, pop it out to each other, log in, voila, you're recording. StreamYard is the same way. And the beauty of this is these platforms are so competitive now. So they're creating all these great options where, right now we've just started, which blows my mind, and I try not to think about it. We stream live to YouTube and Facebook Live every week when we record our podcast now. So which has been, a goal of ours to get out of our comfort zone. And it's been fun. It's actually been a lot of fun. And we find we get some interaction in the live streams. So I'm not saying start out there. I mean, you can. Keeping in mind, YouTube is still the second largest search engine on the internet. So even if you don't live stream to YouTube, I highly recommend, even if it is just an audio file, once we get to the upload point, to upload your finished product to YouTube. Create a YouTube channel for your brand if you don't already have one. Anyway, back to what you need. Microphone. So you saw Ken's setup. I've got my, okay, you can't see it because I've got slides. Never mind. I've got my same Yeti and windscreen. I primarily use that for my voiceover work. And I just get away with, I don't know if you noticed the little headset I have on now. It's a higher end, just all-in-one mic and headset. And I found the sound quality is just fine. So again, my day is busy. So just to be able to pop that in for our podcast purposes, because when you have a platform like Zencastr or StreamYard or the like, they will work on the file before they send it to you. Not they, the platform will process the file in a way that when you receive it, you sound good, which is really nice. And of course, you'll want a headset and earbuds so you can focus and listen to yourself. So you've got the name. You made the pact. You've chosen a name. Got a little plan. You went on Amazon or Sweetwater, got your equipment. Now you want to select your host. And I don't mean, I don't mean you're Jimmy Kimmel. I mean the host where your podcast is going to live. This is where you will upload your episodes and submit the podcast for distribution to all of the distribution channels. And that's where if you're currently a podcast listener, that's where you're listening to your podcast right now. As you can see, I have a number of them listed here: Buzzsprout, Blueberry, Captivate. Oh my gosh, where do I start? We chose Podbean, partly because it's very reasonable. It's $108 a year. It's easy to upload the episodes. It's easy to just dash out your show notes. And your show notes are really just a little summary of the show. In today's episode, we're talking about XYZ, and here are some links, and, providing a link out to, your guest's website if you have one. It's just super simple to use. And you can point listeners to your host quite easily, but you really want to distribute it out. So I recommend, really, if not Podbean, I think Blueberry is also good. You're going to want to just look around and find the one that suits you, both for the technical aspects and also, the ease of use. What I love about Podbean is it also gives you your statistics. And I know it's not the only one that does that. And it also touches on how to monetize it, which I'm not going to go into today, but that's a whole other talk. And Ken has already touched on some brilliant ways people are monetizing their podcasts. Okay, so you've got your home base. You've got your first raw file you've recorded. Now you think, now what do I do with this, right? Post-production. So this is where your recording and editing software is going to come into play. Your Audacity, your Adobe Auditions, your GarageBands. I use Audacity. It looks quite daunting at first, but there are so many helpful YouTube tutorials on how to use it. Basically, we'll pop out of here and pop in there. Oops, there we go. Uh-oh. Screen sharing is paused. Can you see the Audacity? Oh, well, okay. Never mind then. Is it gone? Is it gone? Oh,
I
well.
see the slideshow.
Okay. Alrighty then. Then we will do that. And I've got my little thing here. There we go. Okay. Anyway, the beauty of Audacity is it is free. It's an open source download that is safe. And I think it's probably I don't know, Ken can probably tell me more, that I think it's like the OG of podcast production tools. But, if you're an Apple user, you've got GarageBand. And, if you are a heavy Adobe user, you've got Adobe Audition. So, use whatever's well-versed to you. And, don't be afraid to hit up Ken's son is an editor. So if you need someone to edit your podcast and you don't want to do it, pop it out to him.
He's doing it right now in the
See?
other room.
So if you're going to go the route of doing some intro, outro music, make sure it's royalty free, please. Again, there are many websites out there that let you purchase royalty free music. It's similar to, buying stock photos online. It's minimal cost. You won't have, Taylor Swift's lawyers coming after you, right? You don't want that. You can choose to produce your own little, intro with music if you want, or just have the music. I just find it's nice to kind of set the table and get people ready to listen if you have just like a little 20-second intro of music before you begin. We do our intros live just because we do. We'll set the table for what the show is and what the topic is and start. That's the beauty of this. It's kind of like anything when you begin, right? Do we all remember the first websites that our companies had, right? And you were so proud of it. And then when you look back and you think, I can't believe I put that out there. Be as kind to yourself with podcasting as you are to yourself when you look at your website, because your old websites, because it's a process. Cover art, I highly suggest having at least one branded version. This is what we use for our main version. You can see our smiling faces and the title and the company or organization that the podcast is representing. Or you can choose to do episode covers, which we like to do. This is a recent one. I should put Brent's up here. Shame on me. So, that way people know what to expect and they know what they're listening to. It all helps. And of course, your show notes, which again, some people like to do a transcription of their podcast. That's something you might consider doing when you upload your file to YouTube, because Google is not only going to, scan what it's hearing, it's also going to scan the content of the YouTube placement. Actually, I think
Can you talk a little bit more about those show notes? I don't quite understand what that is.
Okay, so
I can even show examples too if you want.
yeah, I mean, it's basically, episode 88, Winfluence with Jason Falls. And then the notes are just like, in today's episode, we talk with Jason Falls, author of Winfluence, and he's going to share XYZ. Learn more at link.
So it's a really short, like 3-4 sentence kind of thing.
Generally, I mean, you can go deeper if you choose to. Let's say you choose like, I'm going to I'm going to submit to the RSS feeds and the platforms myself. I'm going to house my podcast on my blog, and I'm going to do long form content. You can even do long form content in your show notes. It's really just a matter of choice and preference, and what serves your podcast well, to be honest.
I think it also depends on like how long your podcast
Yes.
is. Like some podcasts, if they're like an hour long, they have like time stamps where like at this time we talk about this topic. At this
Right.
time we talk about this topic.
Yes, exactly. So since ours is, 20, 30 minutes tops, it kind of is what it is. If you need relevant links, here's where to find out more information, kind of thing. So, and then you've uploaded your episode to the host. Use your host platform to set up distribution so it can get out to all the channels. And then tell the world, hey, everybody, I've got a podcast. So that was a major brain dump of the how-to in a short time. So if you have any questions now, or, please know, like we said at the outset, we are here to help you along the way at any point. So let me give the screen back. Or can you take it back,
Just stop it.
Steve, or stop? Oh, there we go. Stop share. All right, Ken, back to you.
Well, I mean, you did an amazing job. We were great co-hosts today. I don't have much to add. I mean, one little side thing on the show notes is I've seen it all over the board. I do recommend that the people that are making some significant monetization from their podcast, they are choosing to house their entire business upon a single place, which is your website. And so if I could show you, you can go to smartcleaningschool.com. You could see that where I have, okay, here's the homepage.
Yeah.
Here's the podcast. My podcast is out in the world, but I also bring it
Yes.
I bring it into my website with lead magnets on the homepage, because I want people to go that find me out there in the ether, come back to my central location. I have a YouTube channel, which is also a separate blog on my website. So I'm capturing people. But the thing is, like when we talk, Michelle and I, you're going to hear a lot of stuff. And here's the key. You take one step and then you take a second. You don't, well, I don't want to get all these things in one time. No, you just pick one thing, you execute it, and then you get comfortable and you get consistent. And then you add the next thing. Like I didn't add the YouTube channel until about 3 months after my podcast. And now I've added something else. And so those are a couple little things. And the show notes too, Michelle, like I've heard some cool feedback from the hard of hearing and the deaf.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Listen the podcast, but they research podcasts and they will read the podcast because of the transcribed show notes. So that's true. And also you can get better SEO with your podcast notes on your website if you do have about 500 words or more. I do, and also you can start getting some backlinks, and so work on that. So there's a couple little points, but I mean, do you want to open this up to questions, or I don't know?
Yeah, totally. And actually, thank you for bringing that up. I think because I don't take the step of putting our podcast on the soloprpro.com website, that that's the easiest blog post in the world. Hey, here's our episode. You definitely want to do that.
Any questions, or do you want either one of us to like show you like what ours looks like or whatever? We're here.
Are you glazed over by now?
I over in the chat box, I don't know if you guys see that. There are some thank yous.
First step.
Ken, can you share the sources for where you got your statistics earlier?
Yeah, and you can Google it. Just type in podcast statistics, they come up.
Okay.
There is a cool. I can put that in an email out to you and give you some links.
Yeah, let's do that.
I did see a question here from Kevin in the chat about using Anchor as a starter. I have friends who've used Anchor. I looked at it. For me, I didn't like that it made you talk now, music now. But as a starter, I mean it's fine. It's fine. I think there might be some barrier to, and again, I didn't delve this deeply, but the one thing that I thought was, but how do I get these files? I'm doing this on my phone or through an app. How am I going to?
That's the free one, isn't it?
Yeah, that could be the control freak in me.
Right. So
So Michelle and Ken, I write for a music website as a hobby. That's what I'm referring to. And I interview Christian music artists, and then I write Bible studies. And so now people have been asking me to post the audio of the recordings. I think I'm doing the audio somewhere else
That's easy
on
then.
TalkShoe.
Yeah.
And then we're editing the MP3 and uploading it through Anchor.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we're not really using Anchor to record.
Oh,
we're just using that
okay.
to host.
Got it.
I just
Okay.
wondered what you guys thought of. We wondered what we thought of them as a host. That was kind of my question.
Gotcha.
I mean, there's so many good ones. The most popular is Libsyn, which Michelle didn't
Yeah,
mention.
that's true. Yeah.
Libsyn's the biggest one. Every single one of them has dynamic statistics where you can see where people are listening, how people are obtaining them, how many downloads per episode, all that kind of stuff. You can look at your podcast by region. It's really fascinating. They all offer. I use Buzzsprout. I really like Buzzsprout the most. They're really good with sharing capability on social. They also have abilities where you can start taking 60. It's hard to share an entire podcast on Facebook, but Buzzsprout and others are starting to come along where 2021 marketing is seeing that when people are scrolling through feeds, they won't necessarily stop for a 30-minute podcast you've shared, but you can create little 60-second snippets of the takeaway of a specific episode and make that an audio. People will stop and listen to a minute and they like it. Oh, this is cool. Here's a link to the full show.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is you're just looking to put out spider webs and draw everyone back to your home, your main place, your website where you do all your business out of.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about Podbean, and I'm sure some of the others do this too. You know, they have different widgets that you can pop the audio file as a post, you know, so if people want to, let's say you're working at your desk. Hey, it's the same as if you have the radio on. Come on. And, you know, I'll just click play on that. You know, as with anything, right? And marketing in the 21st century, or yeah, we're still 21st century.
So,
you know, as few clicks as possible.
So there's a question on how to get started. Like, I think for that one, start with like what I outlined when Max was on. Start with like planning this out, like thinking it through. Why would you do this? Why would you do this?
And what do you want to share?
Who would you do it for? What would you do for those people you're wanting to share? Just go out. And then how would you do it? So Max figured out, well, this is a cool what's the hook? That's the how. And is it going to be an interview show? My show, Michelle, is an interview show. Mine is a combination of interview and mostly solo shows. So I just talk. So it's monologue, but I have some interviews in there too. And you can mix it up. And so design out your podcast. I also, if you want to get more into the weeds a little bit, you can look up like keywords and figure out type things that can help grow your show, because you can throw things into your Podbean, your Buzzsprout. You can find the keywords that would attract people to find your show. Like for me, okay, cleaning. Okay, that's easy. So I have 15 different keywords I've researched that draws people to search that could find me. I make sure those keywords are in every episode. So there's little things you can do there. Those are like some tips on how to get started. Once you're ready to actually launch your show, I love what Michelle said, is get a bank of shows. If you can get a month, I recommend always, Michelle's week to week. That's tough. If you can get ahead of the game, I'm a month ahead at all. I'm 5 to 6 weeks ahead at all points. Never stressful. I'm here today to do all my podcasts through June the 10th. When I'm done today, I won't have any more podcasts to do. They'll all be covered till June the 10th. And
then when will you start recording your next batch, Ken? How long do you wait?
I go the end of every month. So I pick one day a month and I batch all my shows. Interview shows, I might record 1 or 2 throughout the month if there's one, and then I'll do the editing, and then I pass everything on to my son, who does all the editing, post-processing, loads it on my websites, finishes the blogs, gets my MailChimps and everything for email newsletters. He does all the rest of it for me. So it's a complete process. It takes time, but one thing at a time. So start with your why, your what, your how, your all that stuff. I think what other kinds of questions do you guys have?
So Leslie has another one here, which was interesting. I never thought about that. So she's asking the question about private podcasts, primarily
Love that.
for like internal in internal employees, which I think is an interesting idea, particularly for larger businesses.
Right. It's almost like an intranet, right? You know,
You
like
can
Mhm.
you can do that. There's a new host called Captivate.fm, brand new. And the guy I mentioned, Andy Storch, he just switched over from Buzzsprout to them because he has a public podcast, which when you create an MP3 file and then you edit it, post process it, you still end up with an MP3 file. That MP3 file,
Right.
MP3 goes on to Podbean, Buzzsprout, and you pay for them to create an RSS feed out of your podcast. And then once you publish a new MP3, the RSS goes out to all the providers. But that means it's public for everyone. But Captivate.fm, you can create a private RSS feed for a limited number of people. And so he has a membership group with 100 people in it, and he's doing a second podcast, which is it's just for those people, and he can submit the RSS just to that specific group. So that's something that's new technology that's coming in.
Excellent. We have another question. We have two other questions in the queue here. Bob is asking, do most folks listen to our podcast as soon as it drops or much later? For mine, I found the bulk is when it first drops. I think probably because as people subscribe, they just get that notification. But, hopefully if people are searching for what you're talking about, they'll find you eventually. Amanda, what's your question?
My question was, so my company, ServPro Upper Bucks, we do a podcast weekly. And because it's our two CEOs and our marketing team, and we're all working remotely, we usually hop on a Zoom call and then, we record, and then it exports the audio and the visual separately. So, I mean, is there it's probably not the best quality. Is there any helpful advice for how we could get it up to snuff when we're all separate? Or is it just a matter of us each having like good quality mics? Or is it, is there something else that we could be doing?
I mean, you definitely want to have a decent mic, but that's why we use StreamYard now, because it acts like Zoom in that we'll still see each other. But when you get the file, it does sound a bit produced. It gets rid of some of the hums and the snaps and things. So I would look into that, or Zencaster. We found Zencaster could be a little glitchy. I don't know if Ken's found that with if you've used Zencaster at all, but some weeks I would, didn't matter. One of us would plug in the same way and something would be wacky, and we finally bailed. We said, no, we need to find something new. Then all of a sudden Zencaster, came back. Oh, come back. We have video now. We're like, no, moved on to StreamYard. But check out StreamYard.
Yeah.
There's another out there.
I don't do a lot of interviews, but I typically just do it through Zoom and keep it really simple.
Okay.
And what I find amazing is that it's just incredible what post-processing can do for your sound. So Zoom gives me an audio file, and then my son can take that. So any editor, you can do it yourself too. But he takes that file and he runs it into he imports it into Audacity. Mm-hmm. He edits out some of the problem areas as an editor would, and then he does the post-processing to change to equalize it, to change the amplify stuff, to compress. Like, he does all these cool things so that when it's done, it sounds like a professional. And you can do that even with any recording. You can make it sound so much better when you post-process it. Mm-hmm. But I am intrigued by the other softwares that you're using too, Michelle.
StreamYard's pretty sweet.
Yeah. I know people that use it. They love it.
And affordable. So that's the nice thing. It's not going to rock your world.
I would say that was a wildly successful seminar today. We probably should have had 300 people on here. I'm really thankful for those of you that are here. And you know what? My guess is a lot of you are going to share this with your friends. We're going to put this up on our YouTube channel. Give me a couple days. It'll be there. But I want to thank Michelle and Ken for sharing their expertise. You've actually motivated me. I might actually do something with the chamber.
I was thinking that
owners as an opportunity to start, sharing their stories a little bit. It's it's kind of a niche market, but that's okay. But and I think we had great conversation too. These are a lot of good questions. I want to. So Ken really motivated me. Michelle actually gave me the nuts and bolts on what to do here, so I appreciate that. Would you be willing to share those slides, Michelle? Because what I might do is send that out to the group.
Sure.
Because I'll use it.
And I'll add Libsyn. How did I forget Libsyn?
Oh yeah. And my guess is that both of you are available for questions. Probably I don't know if you do consulting on this kind of thing. I think you probably would be willing to do consulting because that's your business, Michelle, and Ken. I think you
Ken
got
too. Coaching,
stick in there too. So.
Oh, my clients should have podcasts. I'm just kidding. Brent's gonna.
I was thinking it, but I didn't say it.
Brent's like, stop it.
But I want to say too, I think one of the neat things about this business community that we have here is that there is a real significant level of professionalism. But what, we also like to have fun, and there's a significant level of camaraderie here too. So, it's really important.
So the Chambers podcast could be like a happy hour thing, kind of like clinking in the background.
Oh, there we go. I like that. I'll start looking for that.
Happy hour with Steve Huntsberger in the Indian Valley Chamber.
You could just take your spotlight series that you send out an email that you
exactly
told me that not many people are taking advantage of that. If it's interview based versus just digital, that could get their voice out to everyone.
Agree.
You're exactly right. So I'm really excited about this. So thank you. Thanks, Ken and Michelle. Thanks for everyone.
Thank you, Ken.
And I always am looking for new seminar education ideas, and this was perfect. And if you have any, my audience, if you have any suggestions for me, we'll run with that. But it was good to see you all today. We'll get.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, thank you, everyone.
And my dog didn't bark. Yay!
Awesome. All right. Hey, thanks.
Have a good day, everyone.
Have a great week, and enjoy the spring-like weather that we have. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Yeah. Bye.